Hello friends, my name is Max, and today I'd like to tell you about another heartbreaking story. On August 17, 2014, a Sunday, Robert Limon, age 38, was requested to cover a shift for a coworker at his workplace. This wasn't unusual for Robert, who was known for his strong work ethic and eagerness to take on more responsibilities. His job involved working at the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway, a train yard near Tehachapi, California. It was about a 45-minute drive from his home in Silver Lakes, Helendale, in Kern County. Robert resided with his wife, Sabrina Limon, and their 2 children. Before departing for work, Robert assured his family that he would be home after his shift. However, he never returned home that day. Sabrina had spoken with Robert earlier that morning. He said that he was busy with work and needed to grab a quick lunch, specifically a tuna melt. Later in the day, Sabrina traveled to visit her mother, who had just sustained a hip injury. Around 5:00 p.m., she sent Robert a text message, but hadn't received an answer and wasn't immediately frightened, given his busy schedule. Robert was supposed to arrive home by 8:00 p.m., however, as time went on without his arrival, Sabrina became very concerned, disturbed by his silence despite her efforts to reach him through text and phone calls. She received no reaction, leaving her anxiously waiting for any indication of his whereabouts. Shortly after, 2 of Robert's colleagues arrived at Sabrina's doorstep with tragic news. Robert had been hurt at work. Sabrina later told the detective that she took this as an indication of a workplace accident, knowing only that Robert had head injuries from a blunt object. Nevertheless, police investigations revealed the grim truth. Robert was not a victim of an industrial accident, but had been intentionally slain. When questioned by the authorities regarding potential motives or suspects, Sabrina and those close to Robert insisted they were unaware of anyone who would wish him harm. Described as friendly and lighthearted, Robert's coworkers, friends, and family appeared to have no known enemies. In response to the tragedy, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad supplied a hefty reward of $100,000 for any information relating to the apprehension and conviction of the person responsible for Robert's murder. Robert's body was discovered inside one of the railway yard structures around 6:46 p.m. He had been last seen by coworkers around 1 hour earlier. At 5:00 p.m., he had received 2 bullet wounds, one to the face, which passed through and excited his neck, and another into his chest, where the bullet traveled upward and became lodged in his jaw. Law enforcement managed to acquire surveillance footage from the security cameras, capturing a mystery individual. This person roamed the railway yard clothed in heavy clothes and exhibited a pronounced limp. The footage broadened their research beyond the immediate vicinity, capturing further footage from a nearby gas station's security cameras. This footage portrayed a person who resembles the figure observed on the railway yard footage. This individual was riding a motorcycle, with the timing aligned closely to when authorities suspected the murder occurred. Considering numerous angles, police investigated the possibility that the shooting may have stemmed from a robbery in the yard, especially because Robert's office had been tampered with. However, this reasoning appeared unlikely considering the existence of additional offices and enterprises nearby that may have been more rewarding targets. Instead, investigators leaned toward the assumption that Robert had been specifically targeted. While authorities investigated probable motives, Sabrina used her social media networks to share her deep grief and admiration for Robert. Amidst this tragedy, Sabrina and her love suffered unspeakable anguish and sorrow. "We were blessed with Rob's presence for the time we had, and the affection he showered upon us exceeded what many may experience or express. I'll carry his affection wherever I go and make sure our children are reminded of that every day as they grow older. It's a bittersweet feeling of joy, but I'm absolutely desensitized to the reality of being abandoned on this planet without him," Sabrina expressed. As investigators dug deeper into Robert's life in search of potential motives, they received a call from someone named Jason Bernardine. Jason and his wife, Kelly, were close friends of Sabrina and Robert. As investigators continued their investigations, they discovered a more intricate link between them. It became clear that they were more than just friends. They were participating in a swinger-type group in which couples engage in sexual interactions with others, and the Limons were active participants. Despite this revelation, Jason's call to the police was not related to their lifestyle. Jason voiced concerns regarding an individual named Jonathan Hearn and urged authorities to speak with him. Adding a fresh layer of intricacy to the investigation, Jason reported to the cops he had been aware of Sabrina having an adulterous affair with Jonathan Hearn, a 24-year-old firefighter, someone he knew from work and mutual social gatherings. Despite Jason's confrontation with Jonathan, imploring him to stop the affair, Sabrina and Jonathan continued their relationship. Jason described his initial encounter with Jonathan as being emotionally overwhelmed and expressing his displeasure in a confrontational manner. Additionally, Jason's wife, Kelly, described witnessing Jonathan visiting Sabrina's home immediately after Robert's murder, carrying a huge bouquet of flowers explicitly identified as Sabrina's favorites. Notably, Jonathan sent Jason a series of text messages after Robert's death, which struck Jason as unusual, prompting him to contact the authorities. These messages from Jonathan appeared to be focused on seeking pardon for his perceived wrongdoing. Kelly revealed that Sabrina shared a letter with her where Jonathan praised Robert's character and expressed regret for his actions. Despite the lack of any arrests associated with Robert's death at the time, Sabrina appeared to be content related to the letter, prompting Kelly's discomfort over the situation. Kelly recalled Sabrina's response, saying, "Isn't this nice? Listen to how sweet Jonathan is." Detectives had suspicions regarding Jonathan and Sabrina's role in Robert's death, but decided not to divulge their knowledge of the affair to Sabrina during the ongoing investigation. Instead, they subtly probed into Sabrina's marriage, finding explicit images of numerous women, including Sabrina, on Robert's phone. When questioned about the possibility of infidelity or an open marriage arrangement, Sabrina vehemently denied any such arrangement, asserting that she and Robert had a strong connection. Sabrina's denial only heightened the cops' suspicions, and they wondered why there was such a disparity, prompting further concerns regarding Sabrina's honesty and what else she might be concealing. Over the course of the 3-month investigation, evidence confirmed Sabrina's long-time affair with Jonathan, spanning about 2 years. Detectives, using wiretaps and strategic planning, created a basic but effective deception. They provided Sabrina with false details of their inquiry and monitored whether she would reveal this information to Jonathan. Sabrina's subsequent distribution of these fabricated details supported the detectives' concerns. Calls to the detectives indicated a troublesome pattern. Immediately after ending conversations with law enforcement, she would immediately contact Jonathan and reveal the details of their discussions. Their recorded conversations were frequently focused around their professed love for one another, recognition of their sins, and mutual desire for divine forgiveness. Jonathan acknowledges, "We have been dirtbags, we have been sinners." As the investigation unfolded, law enforcement officers meticulously collected information not only through phone recordings, but also by analyzing surveillance footage and following up on tips phoned into the hotline. When authorities obtained a crisper image of the person taken in the surveillance footage and showed it to Sabrina, citing a tip, she recognized the individual as someone named Jeanne, who had links with Robert. When questioned, Sabrina revealed the names of 2 males she knew named Jeanne, but excluded any mention of Jonathan. Others familiar with Jonathan recognized him in the image and instantly informed the cops. Both Jonathan and Sabrina were arrested and questioned in connection with Robert's murder. Sabrina was released due to the absence of proof, but Jonathan was charged with first-degree murder. Sabrina was advised that she would be summoned to testify against Jonathan, although this scenario never materialized. Unbeknownst to Sabrina, When Jonathan decided to cooperate with the authorities, he entered a guilty plea in exchange for avoiding the prospect of a life sentence without parole. Jonathan was subsequently charged with manslaughter and sentenced to 25 years and 4 months in prison. Jonathan accepted his culpability for voluntary manslaughter with a firearm enhancement, attempted murder and poisoning. Meanwhile, Sabrina was charged as an accessory to murder. She pleaded not guilty. At Sabrina's trial, the prosecution argued that although Jonathan physically carried out the act of firing and killing Robert, Sabrina was an active participant in the planning and execution of the murder, making her equally accountable. Prosecutor Eric Smith stressed that there was sufficient evidence beyond Jonathan's testimony implicating Sabrina, including wiretapped phone calls, texts, and her dishonest behavior toward law enforcement. These pieces of evidence, Smith contended, pointed towards Sabrina's role in aiding the crime. The court was presented with details about the extensive communication between Sabrina and Jonathan on the day when Robert was murdered. Jonathan made 5 calls to Sabrina, totaling 3 hours and 43 minutes. Furthermore, the prosecution emphasized Sabrina's role in delivering Jonathan details on Robert's whereabouts and work schedule for the day of the murder. Prosecutors alleged that Sabrina's motives for organizing the murder of her husband were motivated by her ambition to start a new life with Jonathan, saying that Sabrina sought to remove Robert so that she might marry Jonathan and have him take on a parental role for her children. In addition to her love for Jonathan, the prosecution identified a potential financial incentive for Sabrina, as she stood to gain $300,000 from life insurance payouts and perhaps receive a settlement from Robert's employer since his death happened at work. Jonathan emerged as a key witness for the prosecution, providing crucial testimony on the planning and execution of Robert's murder. He explained to the court that he and Sabrina realized that the only way they could continue with their relationship was if Robert was no longer living. The objective was for Jonathan to assume the caregiver's role for the children, with the intention of raising them in a God-fearing environment. During his testimony, Jonathan stressed that they were both committed to their beliefs, citing their passion for God and the Bible. He detailed the extensive preparation involved in Robert's murder, disclosing that he had fallen completely in love with Sabrina over the course of their 2-year affair, and that they were resolved to remove the barrier that her husband presented. Jonathan detailed the events of August 17, 2014, recalling how he returned home after a night shift and then conferred with Sabrina over the phone about their plan before heading to the train yard to carry out the murder. He stated that they methodically discussed the layout of the railway yard and developed strategies to ensure Sabrina was aware of Robert's potentially combative nature, advising Jonathan to use caution, recognizing that Robert was not someone who would surrender without resistance. Jonathan informed the court that he rode his motorcycle to Tehachapi, removed the license plate, and took along a rucksack carrying a change of clothes and a .45 caliber pistol fitted with a homemade silencer made from a large Maglite flashlight barrel and engine freeze plugs. On arrival at the Burlington Northern Santa Fe train yard, Jonathan noted that Robert was working in a garage. He positioned himself among surrounding structures, considering his next steps. After a moment of prayer, he entered the garage and engaged in a brief conversation with Robert. As Robert turned away to reach for a refrigerator, Jonathan drew the handgun, approached him, and fatally shot him. Jonathan justified his actions by claiming that it was unavoidable for him to eliminate the obstacle that Robert presented to his and Sabrina's progress in their relationship. After the initial gunshot, Jonathan went to the office where he stole several items, later explaining to the court that he and Sabrina thought it would be advantageous for the incident to appear as a robbery. Returning to the location where Robert lay, Jonathan fired a second shot as a precautionary measure, ensuring Robert's death. He described notifying Sabrina that he had performed the deed and they mutually agreed not to contact each other for a time to evade detection. Jonathan expressed feeling a sense of relief following the killing. The court heard that just days after Robert's murder, Sabrina sent several text messages to Jonathan, not even asking who could have murdered her husband. Instead, she continued to express her love for Jonathan, saying, "Jonathan Hearn, you lovely dude." According to Jonathan's testimony, the day Robert was killed was not the first attempt on his life. Months before the murder, Jonathan stated that they had plotted to poison Robert, which involved ordering arsenic online and mixing it into a banana pudding. He first tested the pudding on himself and the neighbor's dog. Jonathan then gave a portion of the poisoned pudding to Sabrina, with the plan for her to pass it to Robert, intending for him to consume it at work for lunch. Sabrina later directed Robert to discard the pudding, alleging the bananas had spoiled due to fear of being caught. The prosecution suggested that the jury evaluate not only Jonathan's testimony, but also Sabrina's conversations on wiretapped calls and the thousands of text messages between them to determine her guilt. In contrast, the defense claimed that the only evidence against Sabrina was Jonathan's testimony, which they considered unreliable. They portrayed Jonathan as a calculated, ruthless killer who had received a lesser sentence through a plea deal. They characterized the prosecution's reliance on Jonathan as forging an agreement with the devil. Sabrina took the stand during her trial and confessed to having an affair with Jonathan, although she maintained that she was not aware of his plan to kill her husband. The jury found that Sabrina had provided Jonathan with directions to Robert's workplace and details about his working hours on the day of the shooting, communicating using a disposable phone. Sabrina shared her testimony, stating she shared her husband's work schedule with Jonathan simply because she wanted to meet with him. She testified that initially, she was satisfied in her marriage to Robert, but their relationship dynamics shifted in 2008 when they began exploring a swingers lifestyle, which she described as compromising the integrity of their relationship. Despite this, she expressed her continued love for Robert and had not even contemplated leaving him. The introduction of this lifestyle led to increased alcohol consumption, indulgence, and an emphasis on excessive partying and sexual behaviors, which strained their connection. During her testimony, Sabrina recounted meeting Jonathan at a difficult stage in her life while working at Costco. Initially, their interaction was friendly, yet Jonathan had seen her a few times at Costco and eventually requested her number. Sabrina explained in court that she began developing feelings for him as he was intelligent and truly focused on making her feel special in a way she had not experienced before, describing the affair as a form of second life. Sabrina made plans with Jonathan regarding their shared dreams, although still professing love for her husband, Robert. She emphasized in court that she never entertained the idea of harming her husband. When questioned by her lawyer about why she initially lied to the police about any involvement with someone else, Sabrina confessed it was due to embarrassment. She didn't want her personal life to become public. The lawyer highlighted the recorded calls and text messages, arguing that there was no evidence within them indicating Sabrina's knowledge of Jonathan's plan to kill Robert. He stated, "There's nothing in there that says, 'Oh, by the way, get rid of my husband for me.'" The court heard emotional pleas from Sabrina's 2 children, who begged the court not to separate them from their mother. After deliberating for less than 6 hours, the jury rendered their verdict. Sabrina was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, soliciting murder, and being an accessory after the fact. However, she was acquitted of charges related to attempted murder and poisoning in connection to the pudding incident. Sabrina was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, with an additional 16 months to be served consecutively. Despite support from her family, including her cousin who denounced the verdict as unjust and questioned the credibility of Jonathan's testimony, the jury's decision was based on a thorough examination of all the evidence presented, including Jonathan's testimony and recordings. What do you think of today's story? Write your opinion about this case in the comments. I thank you for your attention and recommend subscribing to the channel, as well as clicking on the bell to not miss new videos that are released daily. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.